I'm assuming Councillor Cunningham, and I understand that Drew Sandilands, local journalist, may also join us. So the session is now being recorded. So good morning to everyone. We've noted the apologies for absence. Are there any declarations of interest? No. Thank you. On that basis then, can I move on to item 3 in the agenda, and the revenue budget monitoring outturn? And Margaret, I assume you're covering that.
Okay. So the report today is monitoring our income and expenditure against budget for the period up to 31st of December 2021. So on the basis of the information and taking account of the forecast level of council tax collection for the year, a year-end operational underspend of 1.751 million, or 0.6% of the annual budget, is forecast on general fund services, and the reasons for the departmental variances are set out in the report as usual. Any operational underspend at the end of the year would of course help us in meeting future year's budget challenges. So the figures that I've just quoted reflect that 2.361 million of forecast COVID pressures are covered by drawing on the Council's COVID grant resources, and so these don't impact on the operational budget position that I've just referred to. The figures in the report today reflect the impact of the Local Government Employees Pay Award for 21-22, which was settled relatively recently. And they also take into account the 21-22 government grant redeterminations that we were advised of just before the Christmas break. The forecast outturn position, though, could still change. For example, if COVID pressures increased again beyond the level of resources we put aside, but we think that's unlikely for 21-22. Or if the current year Teachers' Pay Award is settled at a higher level than anticipated, and that any increase is not funded by the Scottish Government. Conversely, it's hoped that there's scope for some further improvement, because management action to avoid any non-essential expenditure has been requested of the corporate management team, and we're hoping that this will increase the underspend at the year end. So taking account of all that, I'm asking Cabinet to approve the budget adjustments that are shown, note the position, and in view of the very challenging financial outlook for 2023 and beyond, continue to require directors to avoid all non-essential spend for the rest of this financial year, as we've already started to do.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Margaret. Much appreciated. I know how much work has gone into doing this, particularly over the last few weeks and months, where we've also had our budget. Happy to open it up, colleagues, for any comments. Councillor Bamford.
Thanks, and thanks for that, Margaret and Barbara. I know a lot of work goes into that, and there's a lot of information there. Can I ask a couple of things? One is the council tax collection is lower than budgeted. I'm just wondering if that is something that will resolve itself over the next while. The other, I'll ask what the couple of things are first, rather than ask individually. And the Chief Executive's Office overspent by 163,000, and the park's operational income was under recovered by 100,000. I'm just wondering if this is overspends that will resolve, over the coming months, so that they will end up not being overspends. I noticed that in the Directorate and Management, I think it was, section, there was mention of electricity. I think it was 50,000 it was mentioned. I'm just wondering, as a general question, and I know this is based on past expenses, we're not really predicting the future here, but I'm just wondering if this is going to put a huge resource, what's going on in Ukraine, if that's going to put a huge resource, not just Ukraine, but obviously with the gas and electricity prices going up, are we factoring that into our future spending I mean the very near future. I don't mean the budget and going forward, because I would imagine particularly things like council buildings and our schools, the projected increases in gas and electricity, I would think are going to have a huge impact. So sorry, that's quite a few questions, Margaret.
I think I've got 4 questions there, so I'll try and get through them in order and pick me up if I've missed anything. The council tax one, as you know, there were 2 factors for this one. All the councils are reporting that their in-year collection levels are down a little bit. Because obviously of the financial pressures that folk were facing as a result of COVID, and pretty much all the councils suspended their follow-up actions when we were at the worst of the pandemic to give people a bit of a break. And we didn't send out our reminders and follow-up and last reminder letters and so forth. We actually did that as well, but because at the same time we were moving to a new council tax system, we are probably just a wee bit slower in starting our follow-up actions again. That has been done now. The follow-up is back on again, and we're finding that the collection levels are coming back up. But so far for 2021, although we will keep collecting after the end of the financial year, and we will get back to, we believe, at least a 98% normal all-time collection that we aim for every year. We're not there yet. We're maybe about 1% or so behind where we would normally be, but we expect to make that up, as you said. So that was in the council tax. Chief Exec's office, I wasn't quick enough scribbling down what the query was in that one about the overspend projection. The
overspend projection is 163,000.
Yes, that's on the interest that we would normally gather in on our financial investments. If we have surplus cash, we put that out to various institutions as part of the Treasury Management Policy, and we get short-term interest on these money deposits. And as you know, interest rates are at historic lows at the moment, and it's very difficult to get any decent returns at all on your money. And we're very strict about where we put our money. We only put it in places where it's extremely safe. So we don't go chasing high interest rates because we could end up losing money. So that's why that is substantially down. And we think that it'll take a matter of time before we can get these returns back up again, because interest rates, although they're starting to rise again now, it's only very slowly. So we work with our Treasury advisors, and we're always looking out for the best deals and the best places to put our money. But we always look for safe places, and it limits the amount of places that we can go to find investments. So that one we think will go on for a bit longer. Yeah. Parks, again, remind me about the parks one. I wasn't quick enough to get to the right page for that one.
Sorry, it was income under recovery by 100,000. I'm just wondering what we're not recovering from parks by 100,000, and is that again just a time lag thing? Will that catch up eventually?
I'm not so sure about that one, and Andy will correct me if I'm wrong. I think it might be to do with the fact that we're up to capacity in certain of the cemeteries. Andy, is that right? I think some of that will be cemetery income.
Thanks. I think it's due to a combination of factors. I'd have to check it out. I do understand that cemetery income may be down because of capacity, but one of the things that we do, if you notice, that's it's about recharges for operational costs. One of the things we do is we recharge to other departments and also to other agencies. And I don't think we've been doing as much as that due to all the issues around COVID. We've concentrated in the provision of basic services, core services, and I think that's what the explanation is, a combination of those two. But I would also add, if you look at the environment pages, it's offset by other areas where we've had major underspends due to just trying to control the expenditure, for example, in relation to waste management.
Yeah, thanks, Andy.
Finally, the final question I think was on the utility prices. And yes, we've been aware of that one for a while. It was quite heavily tagged in advance that the prices were going to increase substantially. Luckily, we buy most of our utilities via Scotland Excel, and Scotland Excel buy in advance. So around 80% of the utilities, electricity and gas that we expect to use for next year has already been pre-purchased via Scotland Excel at old rates, if you like. The contracts were done before the new price rises came in. So the bulk of our electricity and gas has already been secured at not inflated prices. However, the other 20% is clearly subject to the increasing inflation, and we'll have to keep an eye on that as the year goes on.
Thanks, Margaret.
Thanks, Margaret. Okay, do we have any other comments, colleagues? No, I think, again, we all appreciate the pressures that are constantly changing and trying to deliver on these outcomes. But are we happy then, colleagues, to note the recommendations? First of all, that we note the continued financial pressure on operational services arising from the COVID-19 pandemic, and that it's anticipated that most of those costs will be met from the accumulated COVID grant funding. Note the forecast for underlying general fund operational underspend of 1,751,000. Approve the service environments and operational adjustments as set out in the notes on tables on pages 14 to 30. Note the reported probable outturn position. Note that all departments continue to closely manage and monitor their budgets and ensure that spending up to operational budget level does not take place. In view of the challenging financial outlook for 2022-23 and beyond, directors take action to avoid all non-essential expenditure for the remainder of the year. And obviously, as we have been doing in recent months, we'll keep a close eye on that, subject to any further changes. Okay, are we happy with those recommendations, colleagues? Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 4 on our agenda, and I assume Margaret again, trading under best value. No, Barbara.
Yes, me. Thanks, Leader. Under the Local Government and Scotland Act 2003, the Council is required to consider its trading operations and on an annual basis determine those which should be regarded as significant. This report reviews the activities for the financial year 21-22. To be classed as significant, the trading operation can only apply to external trading and to those activities that are not statutory. In addition, the service has to be provided in a competitive environment and the recharge has to be on a basis other than a straightforward recharge of cost. In reviewing an operations classification, further tests of significance require to be taken into account using financial and non-financial criteria. Having considered these conditions, the result of the review is that, in line with last year, the Council has no significant trading operations in the current year, and the Cabinet is invited to approve this position.
Thanks, Barbara. Any comments, colleagues?
Approve.
No. Okay, thank you, Councillor Lafferty. Are we happy then with the recommendation requested to approve that there are no trading services operated by the Council that should be classified as significant? Okay, thanks, colleagues. Moving on to item 5 on the agenda, the Financial Management Code. And again, Margaret. No, Barbara again.
Thanks again. Under the terms of SIPFA's Financial Management Code, the current year is the first year that the Council is required to demonstrate compliance with the Code's 6 principles. The Code emphasises that compliance with the Financial Management Code is a collective responsibility of elected members, the Chief Financial Officer and the Corporate Management Team to ensure the standard of financial management to be expected. Having considered each of the Code's principles and supporting specific standards, the report demonstrates that the Council is providing good practice and sound financial management and is fully compliant. The Cabinet is invited to note the Council are complying with the Code during the current financial year and that future compliance reviews will be reported as part of the annual governance statement within the annual accounts. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. I think we're all more than aware of the high standard that yourself and Margaret provide, and all of our team in our finance section provide. And so I'm more than happy to note our compliance with the code and agree with the recommendation. Colleagues, any further questions? No, thank you, and thanks, Barbara. Moving on to item 6 on the agenda, and debt management for council tax, non-domestic rates, sundry debt income and housing benefit overpayments, and the arrangements for the administration of non-domestic rates. And I believe, Alison, you covering this?
That's right, yes, thank you. This report seeks Cabinet approval for write-off of irrecoverable sums related to council tax, non-domestic rates, sundry debt income and housing benefit overpayments. This is a standard report which is prepared at least annually for Cabinet. We have planned for this, and in all cases of write-off, these sums can be met from existing bad debt provision. There is no net impact on the overall revenue accounts or the budget process, as these sums have already been provided for. Cabinet should be assured that every effort is made to recover these sums, and the decision to seek write-off is not taken lightly or without due cause. In addition, should any future avenue become available by which to recover these monies, today's decision does not prevent any such opportunities being pursued. This year, the sums being recommended for write-off are broken down as follows. Council tax arrears of up to 399,098.87, non-domestic rates arrears of up to 124,821.66, sundry debt income of up to 74,471.68, and housing benefit overpayments of up to 110,637.18. These sums recommended for write-off have been proposed with regard to the Council's debt recovery policy, which was approved by Cabinet. In summary, Cabinet's asked to approve the write-offs that I've mentioned. Note that the write-off of these sums has no net impact on the Council's accounts. Also note that there's water and sewerage charges, which are also being written off in discussion with Scottish Water. And note that discussion with Renfrewshire Council is ongoing in relation to the current public services agreement in place for the delivery of non-domestic rate service. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Alison. Very comprehensive, and as we know, we go through this process every year, looking at any of the debt management of a lot of outstanding debts and what we can and can't do about it. Councillor Bamforth, you wish to come in?
Thank you, Leader. And looking at the papers, I can see, you know, it looks like you've explored every avenue, and that it's good that we've kept it open, though, that we can, if further information comes to light, we can pursue them. I just wanted to ask a little question about the Scottish Water, in agreement with Scottish Water to write off that debt. I presume Scottish Water are assuming that that sum of money, and Scottish Water are not expecting, or are Scottish Water expecting the council to refund them for those figures that have been written off?
No, the discussion that we've had with Scottish Water is to explain that those debts can no longer be pursued, and that's why we're asking for them to be written off on the council tax side, but also on the Scottish Water side, because we no longer have a legal avenue to pursue those debts, and that's the discussion that we've had with Scottish Water, is to explain that we can no longer pursue them, and there would be no reimbursement from the council.
Okay, thanks for that, Alison. Any other comments, colleagues? No, and again, I think the aspect to note is that these debts have been recommended for write-off, as has been discussed. They've previously been included in bad debt provision, and therefore there's no net impact on the revenue accounts. Are we happy with the recommendation, colleagues, and to note those recommendations and approve? Thank you, everyone. Item 7 on our agenda is debt management of irrecoverable former tenant rents and court expenses. And I presume, Andy, you cover it.
Thanks, Leader. I won't repeat much of what Alison said. It's a similar explanation. Essentially, this is the usual year-end report regarding write-offs in relation to tenant arrears and court expenses. The Cabinet's been asked to approve the write-off of 134,773, which is split between the Housing Revenue account and the General Fund, as shown in recommendation 2B. And just note again that we have made provision for bad debts in the council's accounts, but we will continue if information changes. As Alison said in our previous report, we will continue to pursue these. So the Cabinet has simply been asked to write these off. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Andy, for that. Any questions, colleagues? Again, similar to the previous paper, are we happy to approve the recommendations that are mentioned there and note the report? Okay, thank you all. Moving on to item 8 and place-based investment programme for 2021-22, and I presume Andy, you covering this again?
Yeah, thank you. I'll keep this fairly simple. There was a report submitted to the Cabinet, as you may recall, in November 2021, which allocated across several projects, 7 projects in fact, at the total grant for 22-23 of £634,000. But the report pointed out that one of the conditions of that grant is that work contracts have to be signed by 31st of March 2022 at the latest. Some of these announcements are made quite near to the end of the financial year, so that's why we were reporting in November, and staff have done their best to try to progress those 7 projects. However, in relation to one, which was a project submitted by the Culture and Leisure Trust called the Place-Based Green Hall project, we awarded £77,000 for stage lighting and LED at Clarkson Halls, upgrading cabling, sound systems, etc, etc, etc. But in further discussions with the Trust and our procurement colleagues, it's impossible to have the work contract signed by the end of March 2022. As I said previously, that incurs a risk of having to return that £77,000 funding to the Scottish Government. So staff in economic development have been working with Young Enterprise Scotland, who, as members will know, are based in Rook and Glen Park and provide some absolutely fantastic services for young people. Our economic development staff work hand in hand with them all the time on several things. So what we've come up with is a proposal to substitute that scheme with one where Young Enterprise Scotland are seeking funding of around £60,000. Basically, the project is to seek capital funding for 4 units to provide business start-up space for young people, and it would be located in their premises in Rook and Glen Park at the training centre that YES operate in there and that we lease to them. So it will provide business start-up space in the area, allow young people to develop business ideas and collaborate and all that type of thing. Had it checked out, it aligns perfectly with the place-based investment programme criteria. No planning issues involved, and Young Enterprise Scotland have definitely confirmed that they can have the work contract signed prior to the end of the March 22 deadline. So essentially I'm asking the Cabinet really to substitute that scheme for the one that was with the Trust for £70,000, and the Trust can come back, if you recall, that we will report annually on a programme of projects. So essentially I would really roll that one forward and allow the Cabinet to make a decision next year regarding the Trust's application, which, as you recall, we were all very supportive of, but it's just a timescale issue. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Andy, for that. I think a comprehensive report, and I know that the difficulties around spending some of the funding because of the short timescales involved and being able to ensure that we can not only deliver on it, but utilise the funding by the required timelines. And so it does often happen that projects have to be looked at, and that's why it's good that we have something else where we can ensure that the money gets utilised in the best way possible. Happy to open it up for comments, colleagues. Councillor Merrick.
Yeah, I take what you said there, Tony, and thanks very much for the report. Andy, it's that use it or lose it, but you've got to make a decision in a very short space of time. Now, we don't want to lose it, but I think what you're describing there with Young Enterprise Scotland, I think that's a really good use of this money, and will have a lasting benefit. So well done in bringing that one forward. I think it's an outstanding project to invest in. And we've got the money. Perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Bamford.
Thanks. I just want to echo what Councillor Merrick said. I visited last summer in between lockdowns when we were allowed to, and some of the work that's going on down there is just fantastic. It's such a good project that I'm delighted to support it, and I think that's mentioned in the papers, but I just wanted to put on record that I think they're doing some great work, and I think this is a really good decision.
Thank you. I'll ask Michael McKenna to pass those comments back, because all of us think it's a fantastic project, and anyone that's not been down to see it, go and look. It's unbelievable. Thank you.
No, thanks for those comments, colleagues. It is a vital part of some of the work that we do, and I think often unnoticed, but Young Enterprise Scotland have been excellent with us over the years in providing a number of jobs within the park area and the space that they utilise. And so I think, as has been touched on, it's very much place-based, and they do a huge range of work across the authority, but supporting many of the actions that we all want to see in delivering for our employability projects, and that's always good to see. Are we happy then, colleagues, if there are no further comments, that we note the paper? The recommendations are to note the progress made on the implementation of the programme today, and note the decision to approve the substitution of the place-based Greenhall project with the project from Young Enterprise Scotland as outlined in the report. And of course, we continue to monitor all of the projects, and as the Director has touched on, the project that this time wasn't quite ready to be able to utilise the funding will be brought forward and can be brought forward at a future date. We're happy with that report, colleagues. Thank you. Moving on then to item 9 on the agenda, then the scheme of devolved school management. And Mark, we're bringing you in for that.
Good morning, Leader. It's Joe McKay.
Sorry, Joe.
Taking this forward this morning. No, not at all. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And thank you again. The report on page 79 of your papers informs Cabinet of the Department's requirement to publish the Council's devolved school management scheme, and to inform of a proposed change to the current DSM scheme, as it's more commonly known, which specifically relates to schools' ability to carry forward underspends from their allocated DSM budget. DSM was introduced in 1993 and required councils to allocate 80% of school budgets to head teachers in order to enhance and improve use of financial resources by providing head teachers with the autonomy to make decisions on the use of devolved finances. This allows such decisions to be made closest to the children and communities by head teachers, allowing consideration of the unique local circumstances, albeit with consideration of wider local and national priorities. Over the years, the DSM scheme guidance and policies have evolved to reflect the changing landscape within which schools operate, with the most recent change taking place in 2018, when Cabinet approved the introduction of a carry-forward facility, which allows head teachers to carry forward underspend of DSM budget from one financial year to the next, up to a maximum of 2% of that year's budget. The introduction of the carry-forward facility allows head teachers to plan longer term for school improvement activities, to bridge the mismatch in school academic years and financial years, and allows for longer term budgetary planning, including planning for future budget savings, importantly. The Council's carry-forward facility is broadly similar to those in place in local authorities across Scotland. Nationally, DSM guidance has been revisited and updated on several occasions over the decades. The Scottish Government consulted on DSM changes as part of the Fair of Funding to Achieve Excellence in Equity in Education in 2017. This resulted in publication of updated guidelines in 2019. This update in 2019, the guidance produced by COSLA and the Scottish Government, clearly states that all local authorities must publish their DSM schemes by the 1st of April 2021. However, this was extended to the 1st of April 2022 as a consequence of COVID. A common framework was published which local authorities are recommended to work within to align how local authorities publish their DSM, supporting a consistent approach. In preparing DSM schemes, local authorities must consult on their DSM scheme processes and policies with relevant stakeholders in order to consider how effective and appropriate the scheme is and to consider any suggested improvements. The Education Department convened a consultative group consisting of relevant stakeholders to consider the aspects of the current DSM, and paragraph 23 of the report details those consulted. The consultative group will meet regularly on an ongoing basis to consider all areas of the DSM scheme and will, as required by the 2019 guidance, formally review the published DSM scheme every 3 years. The process of consultation will be an ongoing, iterative one. A copy of the proposed DSM scheme is included in your papers in Appendix 1. That starts on page 85. This primarily presents the DSM policies, processes and practices which are currently in place. Following consultation, one amendment is proposed to the current DSM scheme relating to the carry-forward process of unspent allocated DSM budget from one financial year to the next. Paragraphs 16 to 22 of the report provide details of the proposed change, which will continue to broadly align with the current policy, but will simplify the policy and reduce the associated administrative burden. So therefore, Cabinet is asked to approve the proposed change to the carry-forward mechanism of the devolved school management scheme and to note the publication of the Council's devolved school management scheme. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Joe, and for the comprehensive report that you've provided. I think it is important. We've had numerous discussions over the years on the devolved school management, and I think it's vital that we know that that money is best spent as close to those requiring that assistance as is possible, hence the very nature of it. And I think it's right that our schools have it, and it's right that our head teachers are able to utilise much of that funding in order to ensure the outcomes that we all want to see. And of course, most of those are based around the excellence and equity aspects of delivering the services that we provide. Happy to open it up, colleagues, for any comments. No. Sorry, Councillor Lafferty, yeah.
Very swiftly, no question there, Leader. Just to acknowledge the amount of work that's been put in over the past year. I agree with your comments. It's important to work locally to ensure the best continued improvement of our services. Thank you for that.
No, thanks, Councillor Lafferty, much appreciated. If there are no further comments, then colleagues, I'll be happy to approve the scheme to the carry forward mechanism of the devolved school management scheme and to note the publication of the Council's devolved school management scheme following the consultation. Again, a good piece of work that we know, and as we see the results on an annual basis and the continuous improvement, as Councillor Lafferty touched on, we know that the money has been spent appropriately in order to ensure that excellence and equity. Thank you, colleagues, for that. That concludes this morning's business. Thank you all for your time and due diligence this morning. Much appreciated, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you all.
Thank you, Leader.